Hello, my name is Michael Riley. What I'm going to talk about now is converting systems, refrigerators, freezers, domestic home refrigerators and freezers from R-12 to 134a. There's been a misunderstanding, lies, falsehoods, whatever you want to call it, going on for the last, since 1990s, when R-12 was banned. That said, if you change the system to R-134a, you're going to cause sludging. Okay, let me explain where the misunderstanding came into play. And we've got texts today still carrying on that falsehood. And it's a simple statement that actually in one sense is true, but in a common sense aspect, it has no validity whatsoever. Let me explain that. R-12 compressor has a different oil in it than R-134a compressor. I think every technician should know that. If you don't, then you better read up. If you leave the R-12 compressor in the system and put R-134a in there, yes, it's going to plug up the system. It's not going to work, okay? Because that R-12 compressor is not designed for 134a, plus the oil is not compatible with 134a. So when they made that blanket statement that you can't convert from R-12 to 134a, they were actually talking about you can't take an R-12 compressor and just get rid of the R-12 Freon and put 134a in it. That's what they were talking about, okay? But everybody's taking it as, oh, no, you can't switch over to R-134a. You can't. You have to replace the compressor, okay? This is where the confusions come in, and it's carried on for 30 years. And I get texts now that get a hold of me, oh, no, you can't do that, or it'll sludge up. If you leave the R-12 compressor in, which is the R-12 Freon's no longer available, it's been banned for 30 years, yeah, you're going to have a problem because that's not the proper repair in the first place, okay? The proper repair is to take that refrigerator, take out the R-12 compressor with the problematic oil that is not compatible with R-134a, remove the compressor. You don't want an R-12 compressor in that system anyways, okay? Now, if you think about it, you're doing the same thing that the factory's doing when they're building the rest of the refrigerator and they get to the sealed system part. All the tubing is put in. It's all set for a refrigeration system. Compressor, evaporator, condenser, dryer, okay? Heat exchanger. You're not doing anything different. You're cutting out the R-12, the compressor. If you're going to replace the evaporator or heat exchanger, you can. Condensers never need to replace. They're steel. You can blow them out and they don't get holes in them. The heat exchanger, the dryer, you replace all those components, leave the condenser alone. But the key is the R-134a compressor. The same thing that the factories are doing when they build the new refrigerators. They don't put an R-12 compressor in it with R-134a Freon because that doesn't work. It plugs up the system. It's not compatible. They're putting in an R-134a compressor. So by you cutting those components out, putting in the R-134a compressor with the compatible oil for R-134a Freon, and if you have to replace the evaporator, heat exchanger, whatever, always replace the dryer. Always. Do not replace the compressor and not replace the dryer, whether you're converting from R-12 to R-134a or not. Always replace the dryer. Guys will not do it, but you need to do it, okay? Especially in this case with a conversion from R-12 to R-134a. Now, we talked about why they made that statement years ago, and everybody misunderstood it. You can't put R-134a in a R-12 compressor system. It won't work because of the oil. Everybody twisted it around that you can't convert and put an R-134a compressor in there. Yes, you can. Okay, it's the same thing the factory does on the new refrigerators they make now. the rest of the system is the same. They build up the rest of the system. They put a 134a compressor in. They put a heat exchanger in. They put an evaporator in, condenser, filter dryer, and charge it with R-134a Freon, and boom. You have the same refrigerator you have now that they're selling now. You see? There's nothing magical about it. The only thing that you have to do is you have to take, when you take the R-12 compressor out with the oil that's not compatible and discard it, you put the R-134a replacement in. You can go on my website. I've got all the replacements, R-134 replacements for all the models that had R-12 in it. It's refrigerator part replacements.com. Okay? Refrigerator part replacements.com. And go to the compressor page. They're all R-134 replacements. Now, I've been selling these parts for many years, almost 10 years. And technicians have been converting, and I've been doing it for 30 years converting. There's no issues because, like I say, I'm going to go back to that. It's just like you're remanufacturing it in the factory. You're just getting rid of the problem child, the R-12 compressor in oil. Okay? So you're going to flush the system out. If you want to use nitrogen, that's fine. I prefer to do an old procedure. It's called a sweep charge. If you look it up online, you'll see what I'm talking about. We used to have a cleaner called R-11, but it was banned at the same time as R-12. There's another cleaner out now. I've not used it. I don't like putting in anything in the system that I don't know if it's going to create a problem. So I'm not even going to try this new cleaner because it doesn't dissipate like R-11. R-11 went away like alcohol goes away when you pour it on a table. It just evaporates, and it left no residue. I don't want residue from a new cleaner, so I'm not going to do that. So what I do is I take and do what's called a sweep charge. After I get all the components hooked up, then I will run through the low side process adapter valve off the compressor. That's your low side. And with the new dryer on, you're going to have a high side valve because they come with a valve. The ones that I sell do for a specific reason. So you can put both gauges on and see what's happening on both sides of the system. Okay, it's really critically important, especially when you're cleaning it. So I'll put an ounce or two in, and while the compressor's running, and do what's called chase. It will force it through the high side and then back, reclaim it out of the high side. So anything that might be left in that system, that Freon's going to push it out. Okay, it goes right behind it and pushes it right out the high side and purges it. Okay. It works extremely well. It was always our method back 30 plus years ago. And it gets the system clean. Of course, after that, what you're going to do is you're going to evacuate the system. I suggest you leave the evacuation. You don't have to get into microns and all that. These are not critical systems. Guys think they are, but they're not. You could be off by part of a charge and still it's going to cool perfect. Okay? The only thing that really has a critical charge is under-counter ice makers. They tend to be critical charge. You got to be right on. And when you get into commercial with some different metering devices for the Freon. So flush the system. If you do it with nitrogen, that's fine. Okay? Flush the system out. You're just getting any oil residue that might be left in there out. You don't have to overdo it. Okay? One speck of oil in the new oil is from the R-12 is not going to kill anything. It's not going to kill it, okay? There's too much of the new oil, 3 ounces or so. So get it cleaned out, flush it out, make sure the dryer's new, and then what you're going to want to do is evacuate it. And I leave the vacuum on for about 15 minutes. And like I said, you don't need to go down to micron, 200, 400 microns. You don't have to worry about that. Just get it down into it. Your gauge is going to peg to 30. An absolute vacuum is about 28.6. So leave it on there about 15 minutes as it's pegging, and have both valves on. That way you can see both of them peg. That way you know if there's a restriction. Because if the high side doesn't come down past under zero into a vacuum, but the low side is, you've got a restriction in the system from your soldering. Okay? That's another test, and that's why I like to put both valves on. and put both gauge hoses on. That way I can see that the high side is reacting as quick as the low side and that there's no restrictions in the system, especially in the capillary tube. Guys will use oxyacetylene when it's not should not be using it on domestic home refrigerators. It's too hot. It's 3,000 degrees. It's a cutting torch. Acetylene is the proper temperature, 1,700 degrees. Just acetylene. But you're not going to change them from doing it. Everybody on YouTube does it, so I got to have the powerful one. But it causes leaks. It causes plugging up because you get too much solder because it's way too hot. And the solder will continue to flow, get down to the end of the capillary tube and plug the capillary tube up a lot of times. And if that happens, these two gauges hoses on high and low side is going to tell you right away before you go put Freon in here. Okay, it's going to tell you that high side is staying at 0. It's not pulling down, but the low side's all the way in a 30-inch vacuum. Okay, you could stop right there. You got to start taking joints apart because you got to find out where you soldered it closed. Okay, so provided you didn't solder anything closed, the high side and low side are both going to go peg down at 30 inches. At the same time, they're going to just pull down together because the tubing is very short in the refrigerator system. Okay, so it pulls down equally quick. Okay, so once you get it down there, leave it on for 15 minutes. Close your gauge valves on your gauge. Turn the vacuum pump off. Let it sit there another 15-20 minutes. This is a great way to do a leak check without finding out it's leaking once you put Freon in it. Okay, you're just wasting Freon because you got to dump it out again. Everybody's done that. I've done it more than once too, because you get in a hurry. Just leave it on for 15 minutes in a vacuum with the gauge. The gauge is closed, high and low side gauge closed, and the vacuum pump off. And watch and see if those needles come up at all from 30 inches. If they move up a couple inches, you've got contamination still in there. Evacuate it longer, okay? Because any kind of contamination will absorb some of the vacuum. It's not going to go up to 0, but 2, 4, 6 inches of vacuum, that's contamination, okay? So evacuate it some more, another 10, 15 minutes, and turn it on again, and then you should be good. Leave it on for 15 minutes with the gauges closed and vacuum pump off. If that needle stays right where it's at, doesn't go anywhere from almost a 30-inch vacuum, you're good. You have no leaks. You've got no restrictions. You're ready to go. You're ready to recharge the refrigerator. And they're going to be happy because they got a refrigerator back operational. And you've converted it from R-12 to 134a like every other technician said they couldn't do because they believed the lie that's been told by SubZero. SubZero techs will, I've experienced it, will go in and say, no, wait, you can't fix that. R-12 refrigerator, you can't fix it, you have to buy a new one. I mean, it's unbelievable, the level of dishonesty. And I don't know if it's just dishonesty, it's just lack of knowledge. It was very simple. The R-12 compressor, if you put R-134a in with an R-12 compressor, yes, that won't work. That will cause sludge. But they weren't talking about changing the compressor. Okay? When you change the compressor to R-134a compressor, there's no issues at all. You just got to flush the system out, evacuate it. And when you recharge these, it's not going to be the same charges on the model and serial tag. Okay? Because it's not R-12. It's R-134a. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Any tech that's been doing sealed systems for a long, long time trusts the gauges more than they trust a charge. Sometimes your batteries go out on your scale. Sometimes you don't have it with you. We get into the habit of grabbing a hold of the lines. You check your high side coming out of the compressor, and that should be good and warm, if not almost hot. Okay? If you're a good tech, that's what you do. Use your hands and your eyes to feel the temperatures of the tubing. And as well, the low side is going to be kind of cool, but it should not be cold. The heat exchanger will having the capillary tube soldered to the suction line all the way back to the compressor. The purpose of that being soldered to it is to take the hot inside the capillary and the cold inside the suction line, and they neutralize each other because they absorb each other's temperature. Okay? Heat exchange. That's why it's called that. So it ends up neutral in temperature. So the Freon, when it gets back to the compressor, is not liquid. Okay? So it won't ruin the compressor. So what you're going to do is trust your hands, your eyes, your feeling of the tubing and everything else. And you're going to go by the gauges to charge it, and also visually. So what I mean by that is the gauges, when you start charging it, you're going to charge it through the process stub with the valve on it, and that's the one off the compressor. You've got your high side, low side, and the process stub, and that's got a valve on it right from the factory. Put the old process stub from the old R-12 compressor in the new R-134a compressor. It has a valve on it already. Just move it over, desolder it, and solder it back in to the new compressor. And you've got your charging port right there. When you charge the refrigerator up now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to run the compressor, turn the compressor on. There's no Freon in it, and run it as you're charging it. Okay, because the suction line is going to be pulling in that Freon and being helpful to help you charge it, because the can, your Freon can, is going to get freezing cold. And so when you charge it, have the compressor running, okay? And then it will help you. Otherwise, you'd have to dial it in by charge, the amount of charge, ounces, because your gauges aren't going to tell you what the running pressures are if it's not running, okay? Obvious. So you want the compressor running while you charge it through the low side, and then watch your gauges, okay? Okay? So you're going to put it in through the process stub valve, and that's the low side, and keep your high side gauge on, and you're going to want to put it in slow, okay? Do not, you put it in with a can upright. Do not put in liquid. You're going to ruin the compressor. Guys get away with it. You get away with it. You get away with it. And then finally, you're going to ruin a compressor. And you'll never do it again. Okay? Because it does go in quicker if you go through liquid and turn the can upside down. But it wipes the valves clean inside of oil when it does that. And you don't want to do that. You want to be running without oil in the valves. Okay? So don't do it. Do it with gas, with the can upright, okay? And do it slow. When I charge the low side, the can, for just in room temperature, or if it was in your truck, it might be 90 or 100 pounds when you open that low side valve up on the gauges to let the Freon in. Don't charge it with that high of pressure. Charge it at about 30 to 50 pounds, 60 at the most. Open it up, crank it open a little bit, and then it gets up to 50, 60, stop there. Don't open it all the way up. And let it go in slowly. If the can starts to get cold, which it's going to start getting freezing. Everybody knows that. Put it in a bowl of warm water. Don't get it extremely hot. I actually had a can explode on me one time when I was holding it underneath the sink with the hot water, and the lady's hot water was too hot. The can exploded, the Freon can. And anyways, so it was one of the small cans, the 12-ounce cans. So put it in slow and watch the high side pressure. The high side pressure is going to go up and up and up. Get it up to about over 100, 110, 115, and then turn the low side valve off to stop the Freon from going in. Okay? What you want to do is you want to allow the compressor to compress the Freon that you just put in there. And it takes a few minutes for that to happen. Okay? Once it gets compressed and circulates around, then the gauges are going to stabilize. The high side is going to come down from what your can pressure was, from 50 to 62 or 30, and it's going to come down to about, it's probably still going to be in a vacuum, but it's not going to be a full vacuum. You're at about 110 or 115. So it might even be right around zero. Okay? And that's good, because it's showing both sides are going up equally in progression to the Freon being put in. And your target point for SubZero refrigerators and freezers is about 8 to 12 pounds on the low side. Don't go in too quick, okay? Because you're going to overcharge it. Your can is already cold, and you wrap a towel around it to keep it upright in the water, a bowl of water. And you might even have to get more warm water, but you will, because it'll cool the water down real quick. And just keep bleeding it. Now you're going to bleed it in. You're going to open it up. You're going to leave it on for. I usually count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I shut it off. I just do it for like 5 seconds at a time when I get close to the end. That way I don't go over the charge, and I watch the high side. And then as soon as I turn the low side valve off, then the low side will drop from the can pressure down to what the system pressure is on the low side. And just start building that up higher and higher. And you'll see that now the high side's 120. Now it's 125. Just keep like 5-second bursts at a time, and then close it. You get up to 125. You might get up to about 130 on the high side, and then shut it down and see where that low side goes. I like to have it about 8 to 10 pounds. I don't like getting up around 12 and it possibly going over. And the other thing, while you're doing this, is you want to keep both refrigerator and freezer doors closed. Okay? If you don't keep the refrigerator and freezer doors closed, warm air is going in there, and it's warming up that evaporator that the Freon's flowing through. It's going to screw with your pressures. Okay? It's going to rise them. Because it's the evaporator's warmer than it should be. The other thing that you want to do is, what I do is I usually have the evaporator cover off, of course, because I'm working on it. But before I start charging, I'll put the evaporator cover back in place, not screwed all the way in, but up against the wall, up against the evaporator, maybe even put one screw in just to hold it in place so it won't fall down, and then close the doors again. That allows the air to flow through the evaporator and cool like it normally will once it's all put back together again. And that's going to be a more accurate gauge pressure by doing that as you're charging it. Okay, so you're going to get it up to about 8 to 12 pounds on the low side, 125, 135, depends on the ambient temperature of room temperature, whatever that is. If it's 75 to 85, it's going to be in that area. If it's 100 degrees in there, your high side might be a little bit higher, okay? But it shouldn't be 300 pounds. If that's the case, you have a problem. So 125, 135, and that's generally speaking almost every situation you run into, unless you're in a garage and it's really hot outside, okay? But still, it's going to be maybe 150 at the most. It just doesn't go up that high like air conditioners do, home air conditioners. So get those pressures dialed in, and then once you feel like you're right there, 8 to 12, somewhere in that area on the low side, and 125, 135 on the high side, okay, you feel pretty good. Shut everything off, then open the freezer, pull the evaporator cover out, but do that after about 10 minutes. Give it about 10 minutes to fill that evaporator, okay? Don't do it right away, because it's got to run through all the runs of the evaporator, the Freon, and start to chill and lightly frost that evaporator. So give it 10, 15 minutes. Just go outside. Say, I got to go outside and do something, or get something, and then come back in 15 minutes later. So you're not trying to open it up too quick. Take the panel off and see if you have the light frosting on the capillary inlet all the way down, and then up the back. And you'll see the tube, the suction line tube going back in at the top that goes to the heat exchanger, the larger tube. And that should be frosted across the top, the suction line going back. That should be lightly frosted. And if that's the case, you're fully charged. You're great. That thing's cool and great right now. I mean, you could see it. It's the whole evaporator is lightly frosted. Sludge? No. It wouldn't be doing it. Freon wouldn't be flowing through it. So see, put that in the past. You're changing the compressor to R-134 compressor, so that sludge issue has nothing to do with anything anymore. Okay? You're updating the refrigerator from an R-12 refrigerator, just like the factory's doing. They're not putting R-12 compressor anymore. You're doing the same thing. You're putting R-134a, flushing the tubing, and putting the other components in, and recharging it with 134a. You see how stupid it's been over 30 years of guys missing the real point of this and saying, oh, I can't put an R-134a compressor in there, it'll sludge. No, it's not going to do that, okay? The factory's doing it when they build new ones. Everything else in the refrigerator is the same, except the compressor. That's it, okay? And the Freon. So you just had success. That evaporator is nicely frosted. You can button them up, button the whole thing up, take your gauges off, and you're all set to go. Now make sure you always check your condenser to make sure it's clean. Customers always forget that. It could be 10 years of dirt on it, and they just never know to clean them. So if you're going to put a compressor in it, don't ruin a new compressor by the condenser. You're not checking the condenser and cleaning the condenser. Okay, I'm just going to point that out. I've seen it done. And you're back in business. So I hope this helps to dispel the lie and the falsehood and the misunderstanding for 30 years. You know why I knew right away you could do it? Because the car industry did it. Think about it. The car industry in the 90s were doing what they called retrofitting. R-12 compressors and R-12 Freon in the cars. At the same time, we had the same situation. They were taking the R-12 compressors out. They were converting them to R-134a compressors with R-134a oil. They were flushing the system. That's what they called retrofitting. They've done it to billions of cars since then. Billions. And they're on the road cooling great. Never one sludge issue. See, that's what I saw right away, and I didn't believe that and misunderstand it. So unfortunately, so many did. And I've done thousands and thousands of change outs from R-12 to 134a in the last 30 years. Never one issue. Because it's just a clean system with a new compressor and a new oil that's meant to work with the new Freon, R-134a. Okay? So treat the customer right. Don't try to do what some of these guys are doing. They're leaving an R-12 compressor in, or they're replacing that R-12 because the R-12 compressors are still available, which is unfortunate. And no, I have to put the same compressor in. It's because they just are. They're not really smart. It doesn't have to be that compressor. The factory changed it to R-134a. So can you. It just amazes me. Anyway, so they're putting R-12 and they're putting in blended Freons and they're putting in replacement R-12 Freons, and that's not a repair. That's just not the proper repair to the customer. You've just done this customer a total disservice. You've charged them a bunch of money for a part that should not be in the refrigerator anymore, the R-12 compressor. Don't do that. You're really, I don't know if it's ripping off the customer. In a sense it is, because they're paying for something that's not right. Put the R-134a compressor in there, okay? Do the repair properly. I had two guys from Texas here recently. Oh my God. One's teaching the other one. And the guy that was being taught got a hold of me, needed an evaporator, got him an evaporator. And first of all, used the other guy that's training him has oxyacetylene. He ends up melting the evaporator, aluminum to copper fitting, because he's got 3,000 degrees on the evaporator, and blames the evaporator because it has a leak in it. No, it doesn't. Not until you melted the joint, the aluminum solder joint, and you did it. So they had to buy another one. But he's discharging Freon in the house and then turning the torch on. R-12 Freon. That causes phosgene gas. It's a deadly gas. It's a bluish-green flame when you turn the torch on. If you see that bluish-green flame, turn your torch off. That's burning the Freon, and it's phosgene gas, and it scars your lungs. Okay? I've had it happen to me over the years. And he's supposed to be capturing that Freon. Why is he just letting it out in the room? I don't understand. And especially when you're going to light a torch right afterwards. And then it was just, and then leaving the R-12 compressor in. And I said, you know what, I can't sell you any more parts because you're not doing the repair properly. Oh, he knows what he's doing. He's been doing this a long time. And so I'm not going to argue with that. If you want to go with ignorance, then go with ignorance. But that's not the way you treat a customer properly. You put the proper equipment in, well knowing that this has been a falsehood and totally misunderstood. And I told you why. Because the R-12 compressor cannot work with R-134a Freon. Of course not. That's why you take the R-12 compressor out and put a 134a in, flush the system and put 134a in, and it cools great, just like the ones coming off the factory now. Okay? So, I don't want to go on and on, but don't be one of those that you may have been in the past because you didn't really know the facts. These are the facts. Start doing the repair properly. I have restoration kits that I've started to make available because customers, SubZero customers, are being told that they can't fix it, whatever. So I put restoration kits together, the compressor, evaporator, heat exchanger, and dryer. They're on my on both of my websites that I sell the parts on, refrigeratorpartreplacements.com. And then the easier one to say is restoreyoursubzero.com. Those restoration kits are on there. If you have a model that's not on there, let me know. Just message me, email me, whatever, and I'll put one together for you. All I need is a model and serial number. Okay, but trust. 30 years of experience, 40 years in the business, but 30 years of replacing these and changing them from converting from R-12 to 134a. Never an issue. Okay, and I know a lot of guys do the same, have been doing the same thing. Never an issue. Okay, so trust that. It's the best. It's you. Best thing to do if it's 20, 30 years old, replace the whole sealed system, minus the condenser. You don't need to replace the condenser, it's steel. It doesn't have a problem. The other ones corrode, and everybody knows that, the evaporator and heat exchanger. And then the R-12 compressor's got to be discarded and R-134a put in. And then a new dryer. I make those in a kit. Customers buy them. And they try to find service companies to install them independent, because SubZero, of course, they won't install anything you buy. If you're a service company out there in different cities, you can get some free service here, okay? Referral from me. Go to my website. I have two websites. We go to that SubZero, restoreyoursubzero.com. And you can find it on there as well. I'll put the links in the description also below. But I have two directory websites for independent service companies. Factory service is not allowed on those directories. That way customers can go to the directory. They can find somebody local to them. And it's free listing. I just want to get you service guys on there so that the customer have somebody to go to. And you're going to install their parts. Okay? Be open to this, service guys, okay? You're making a bunch of labor here. I'll cover the part warranty. Don't worry about that. You do the labor end of it, and you get paid the labor on it. If you want to make a deal with the customer that you buy the restoration kit, and if you don't even want to bring it up to the customer, you just buy the restoration kit, and you do the charge them for the restoration kit and the labor, that's fine too. But I want also for service companies to put your listings on both my website, directory websites, so that customers can call you and treat them right, please. You're doing a repair, they're supplying you with the parts, so what? Okay, you're still going to make $600-800 on the labor. Okay, so you're not losing anything here. And then we can work together and take care of the customer's needs. Okay, I really want the good service companies out there, independents, to get a hold of me and get on those directories, okay? I really want to get that directory list filled up so that when I do sell parts, and I sell a lot of parts, I got people wanting to buy evaporators, and I always have to tell them, you got to find a service company first, because I don't want you trying to refund it. Usually they're able to do so. I've even walked through HVAC guys doing the repair for them on the SubZero refrigerator, because there's just a little bit of difference. HVAC guy knows how to braze and everything, but I just have them call me, and I'm going to just share a few things about the smaller lines and tips to not plug up the capillary and that kind of stuff. Not like a know-it-all, just to share as a tech to a tech. That be careful about this, be careful about that. And they always appreciate it. Okay? So I'm here to work with you. I'm not a know-it-all. I do have a lot of experience. And I wanted to dispel these rumors and falsehoods about this sludging. It just does not exist if you do the repair properly. And that's replacing the compressor. Take the R-12 compressor out of there. Put the R-134a compressor in. Flush the system. Okay? So, good luck out there. And I do have the kits, and I've got the evaporators. I manufacture I have 15 different models of SubZero evaporators. They're higher quality than the SubZero ones. We all know that those had leak problems over the many years. So I also have the evaporators that I manufacture, much better quality. And I've got all the parts for SubZeros. If you can't find a part, go on my website, refrigeratorpartreplacements.com. And you can find whatever parts. If they're not listed on there, then it's not parts that move. Just send me a message, email me, and I'll find the part for you and give you a quote, and we'll get it out to you immediately. Okay? So I just want to work with you to get things, customers taken care of, and make things much easier, since SubZero turned the whole industry upside down when they yanked all the parts and service out from under everybody here in the last 10 years. Just terrible. Okay? All right, take care. Please do subscribe to the video, you'll be seeing new videos all the time. I'll be putting on with new things. I'm going to be going over a capillary tube trick that I learned from an older guy about 35 years ago. I'm not going to say anything about it right now, but I'm going to go over a trick that you'll never solder a capillary tube closed again if you do this trick. It's really simple, but it is really powerful tip, because if you've ever soldered a cap tube closed, you're looking everywhere for the problem, why the system's plugged and restricted, and it's the capillary, because it got so hot, solder just flowed right down to the end of the capillary and plugged up to the end of the capillary tube. So, different things. I'll be coming out with different videos constantly, with things to help you out and dispel rumors and get things going right, so you can actually make more business. If you know that you could convert R-12 to 134a, you wouldn't turn the customer away. You'd have made $600, $800 on every one of those refrigerators in the past that you said, I can't fix it. Okay? Think about it. That could be into $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 over time or higher. Okay? So this is what I'm here for, is to share and clear up problematic areas that have been misunderstood, lies, whatever. Okay? So, like I said, please do subscribe so you can see these new videos all the time and keep up with it. And like the video if you like it. If you don't, if you put the down finger, I don't care. If you watched it all the way through, then I know you liked it. You may not like me. Maybe that's why you're putting the downer. I'm kind of ugly, but that's all right. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.